Hey, everybody, this is your boy John, aka Captain Lestache here. And today's episode, we're going to be talking about some pretty serious stuff. So, yes, we're going to be really serious today, not our funny selves, as best as we can. But, yes, we're going to be talking about imposter syndrome and basically everything that has to do with that. So, stay tuned.
Evolve, adapt, overcome. Power up your mind and level up your soul. It just takes one small step to be better.
Hey, everybody, again, this is your boy John here. And as always, I got my boy Matt, aka Grumpy Beard, up in here.
What's up, everybody?
So, yes, I know today we're doing a little something different as we normally do. And, we haven't done one of these in
Evolve, baby.
the Evolve, what we used to call a long time ago our serious episodes. But now we had to name for it. And we're like, wow, we actually have something going on here. So, yes.
Yeah.
And, of course, that music you probably haven't heard before. I mean, Matt and I know he's heard it multiple times. I've only heard it a handful of times. So,
It's fairly new music, but I think we've only used it like maybe once or twice because we haven't done a whole lot of Evolve episodes.
well, I'm pretty sure we only really did the one like right when season 3 started. And, we didn't really do anything else after that,
I mean, we used to do a whole lot more Evolve episodes. We just haven't done a whole lot of them.
Recently, and it does take some time, to kind of come up with some of these because like it's not like some of the other ones we've talked about, like the addiction and like some of the other like stuff like suicide and that kind of stuff.
I actually didn't think when I was thinking imposter syndrome, I didn't really think it was an episode like a full like a full episode. Not that it wasn't episode worthy, but like a full like that it would fill a whole episode. But then like once I started getting the notes in there and I was plugging them in, I was like, wow, there's like a lot of notes. Like
probably a lot more than you expected. That's for sure.
it's 5 pages of notes actually in Google Docs, and I was like, whoa.
You're like, okay, well, I guess we can talk about this.
And I mean, it's not like my notes like sure like the headers are bigger, but like the text in between the headers are only like 10.
Yeah, I mean, so
So
I mean, granted, we're not talking about college style like writing here, but
and it's in italics, so it takes up even less space. So having 5 pages when your font is at a size 10 in italics.
no, I mean, when we talk about our stuff, I mean, we still get usually anywhere from an hour to an hour 30 is usually our try to hit our hit mark, because it's funny when. I know this is from a long time ago, but when we first started, Matt and I were like, let's try to do like 45 to an hour being the most. And then at that point, we started keep recording and we're like, there's no fucking way we can do that.
45 minutes is ideal for podcasts from what they say, but
they say, but then like when you look at other podcasts that have like 2 or 3 hours worth, I mean we're kind of, I would say
crazy if you're doing 3 hours.
I was going to say whoever travels and commutes and stuff, I mean, we're pretty much like, we're a good podcast that like, give you that, like, if you want to listen to us, the first half of your day and then like the second half when you come home, it's perfect, or, if you're like, hey, I like listening to podcasts while I'm at work. Well, we got plenty of that. We got plenty of episodes that you guys can listen to. But yes, moving forward, yes, we should really kind of mention what imposter syndrome is.
Yeah. So imposter syndrome, you're kind of like, what is imposter syndrome? It's not like you're walking around incognito, like in costume or something. It's actually a psychological pattern where individuals doubt their abilities, their accomplishments, or their worth. It's a fear of being exposed as a fraud. Even though, there is evidence of their success. It's one of those things that's, often described as the inability to internalize success. And before we move on, I think when I'm doing these notes,
I love how he's now going to mention this. But
sometimes like when we're doing these like Evolve episodes, and it's like, I don't per se struggle with like drugs or addiction. I don't have like mental health issues per se. But like, I'm doing these notes and I'm like, I'm like reading through all this and I'm like, being exposed as a fraud, even though there's evidence of success, inability to internalize success, you know, instead of celebrating achievements, someone with imposter syndrome might, attribute them to, either luck, timing, or, getting help from, somebody else. It's sort of like I almost kind of internalize this and I go, is this me?
Well, I mean, and I hate saying this, but like, when somebody says, "Oh, I'm like as normal as they can be," I highly doubt that because everyone in the planet in some way, shape, or form. I'm not saying we don't go through, let's say depression, like or you know, strands of like, let's say grieving or even sometimes even like looking at this stuff, where, some people are like, oh, well, if you're diagnosed, that's what it is. Like, no, I mean, as humans, we know emotions, and that's the problem. A lot of this is emotional based issues when it comes to like, like this and like, again, bipolar and OCD and like, name the whatever else you want to name, where looking at this, I mean, I would say in some ways there's a lot of, I mean, I've definitely experienced some of this. I'm not saying that I haven't,
Yeah.
but like it doesn't mean that you as the individual, unless, like I said, unless there was like a maybe psychological reason, like you're doing it all the time. I mean, people think that you're not who you are, right? Like, or you may think that you're not what you should be, right? Because there's times where I think like, am I even worth this? Am I worth somebody's, time if I'm not, living up to those standards or living up to those expectations? Because I kind of feel like that's what it is. It's that standard or that expectation that somebody needs to be,
Yeah,
but
I
not
think
getting
I
up to
mean
that point.
it's really one of those things is like you you feel like you are you doubt your abilities even though people are like I could say like people would tell me I'm a really good bass player.
I would say
E-
you're pretty good, but yeah, from hearing you.
Even though I could look at myself and I could say I kind of suck actually. Like and it's not because like, like I could compare myself to others and I could be like, yeah, I get through, I'm okay.
I mean, I feel
And
like, I mean, no, if I mean, okay, if you're gonna go that route, I mean, if you're gonna, let's say, compare yourself to somebody that was like, I don't know,
well, yeah, I mean,
let's
if
say
I'm comparing
like
myself
Queen or like
to
Van
like
Halen or
if
somebody
I'm
like,
comparing myself to like Flea or something like somebody like that, but like I could say like, yeah, I get by, but I'm not great. Like, but it's similar to that where, you could you could have success like you could be, when it comes to work or whatever, like you're accomplishing tasks. Like I could take this podcast for example, like it could sound really great, nailing the like the EQing, whatever, it's getting posted, like it sounds really great, and I could still like, yeah, well, it's luck. It's just how it drops. It could always be better. Like there's so many other people doing it better than I am. You know what I mean? It's that's what the imposter syndrome is. It's just always having that fear of like not feeling good enough, and other people, like you like I being afraid and not talking about me personally, but just you're doing something and it's like, what if I'm found out? Like people are gonna start looking at me like, oh, I'm not doing it good at
well, and that's where I feel like that's anybody or a lot of people where they feel like they're putting on a facade or they're putting on this show where they're like saying, hey, I have to let's say be this Instagram model, right? And they have to put on this show, they have to do whatever, but they're like, oh, well, this person's doing it 10 times better because they have more followers than I do, and so on and so forth. And then it leads down to this rabbit hole of like, you know, am I good enough? Am I
Right.
am I good enough to be on here? I mean, granted, social media does not help with this syndrome whatsoever.
No.
Um,
And I think we touch on that point a little bit later on.
Oh,
But yeah,
wow.
social media does not help. And if you compare yourself to anybody on social media, like you're comparing yourself to people's highlight reels, and
I think
you're not comparing yourself to like what's real. You're just you're comparing yourself to like
a reality that is made up
Yeah.
in some ways, but yeah.
So the term imposter syndrome was first coined in 1978, which is a year before I was born, by the
Oh,
way.
look at that, Matt. There you go.
So it was first coined in 1978 by psychologist Dr. Pauline Clance and Dr. Susan Imes, who observed it in high achieving women who struggled to acknowledge their competence.
Now, I am going to say this real quick. I find that interesting. I'm not trying to give people history lessons, but I mean, when you think about it, I mean, when you look at the women in the workforce, right? They've already felt like they are not capable, or they've been told that you're not capable of doing what a man can do, kind of thing, right? And then when they're doing that at a higher level than a lot of, let's say, men, and now they're thinking, I'm not good enough. I'm not this. I'm not that. I find that interesting because this is also where I'm going to say it. I'm not saying men and women don't think somewhat the same on this, but there is a difference where the wiring, as we've mentioned before, of the brain, especially with women and men, how we prioritize different things like they do. So we
Yeah.
might prioritize what our success is versus what they're doing, clearly in this case. So it's interesting to see how they did this back in the late 70s and said, okay, well, they're finding it in higher achieving women. They're not mentioning the men part of this, but just the women part of it. I don't know. I find that interesting in itself.
Yeah, so it's high achieving. So these women were high achieving. So they
we're-
obviously were a high. They were successful in what they were whatever they
Right.
were doing.
I mean, it could have been a lawyer, it could have been a Nobel Peace Prize winner, it could have been whatever.
but these same women who were successful struggled to acknowledge that they were successful.
Mm,
So that's where they first coined the term imposter syndrome. But it's like since then, it's been recognized as something that affects people of all genders and backgrounds.
of
And
course.
I mean, obviously, it does, and we can see that. But moving into what do people with imposter syndrome often experience? Like, what does it look like? What are the common symptoms?
Well,
I will go into the first one,
Okay.
and that would be chronic self-doubt. I mean, that's kind of, I guess, the given obvious. In situations where people would have repeated successes, they accomplish their tasks. They are repeatedly accomplishing whatever is in front of them. They might finish whatever the project is, whatever they're doing, and still think to themselves like, "Oh, that was just a fluke. Anyone could have done that. I'm not anything special."
Right.
Like, this is not something that like is, you know, high achieving for me. Like,
Right.
you could have done it. The dog could have done it. Like the child could have done it. That squirrel could have, you know what I mean?
A monkey. Yep.
It's like whatever, that's where the self-doubt comes in. Like a barrel of monkeys could have done this. It's not anything special. Like,
Yeah, and I think that's and this is where I say, I think as a humans, it's like we do semi kind of feel like this sometimes, where we might feel that let's say you're an expert in your field, and then you're doing this, and you're like, well, anybody could have done that, but like really, there's not many people that could have.
no.
You know what I mean?
And
Like,
that's the thing. Like, sometimes like I do feel what I do as far as like, the audio portions of our podcast and how I go about editing it, like I do feel like I'm pretty successful with it.
yes, you are, because without that piece, I'm not gonna lie, it's gonna sound like shit if that was the case.
But I would be lying if I if I did say like that there isn't a portion of me that doesn't think like this. Like, you know what I mean? Like there
Yeah.
is a portion of me that says like, well, anybody who has a brain in their head can do what I'm doing.
But I'm going to say this. Okay. You said that. And then I told you that you're like, oh, I just went on YouTube and started learning all this. I'm not saying anyone can't. That just takes time. It's a skill set. It's something you have to learn. And whether you are self taught in your case, or you're, let's say have a mentor, somebody like who can show you the ropes kind of a deal, which I have mentioned to you before that I said maybe you can tutor me in a sense. Um, just saying. But yes, no, like so that's where it's good for someone like you, where there are certain skills that you could do on your own and there'd be no issue. But then there might be something where you're like, you know what, I kind of need somebody to kind of show me, and then I can kind of dive in myself and kind of do that. Where that's what I mean. So like for me, I'm not saying that I'm not technologically advanced. What I am saying is me learning that, especially like the sound and kind of doing that, like I would need you to kind of show me that piece. So then maybe I could then go in and, dive in and do that. Where, again, somebody else in a different field or a different skill set, they might have, that same kind of thing and that same process of like, maybe I am not going to be good enough. And, I know we're going to talk about another different one, which
Yeah.
actually might as well just talk about now, like, avoiding new opportunities, right? So,
Oh, you skipped.
oh, I did, but we're
Yes.
going to relax. We're going to be talking them all, but yes, avoiding new opportunities, right? So, fearing they'll fail or finally be exposed as inadequate, right? Or stay in the same job despite hating what they do, or even avoid promotions or accepting new responsibilities, right? So, like, kind of like, well, I guess somewhat similar to what I was saying, but like in this case, where for me, yeah, there was a lot of times, especially military wise. Yes, I'm just gonna say it now. Yes, I am. I am no technically longer in the military. I am officially have gotten out. Yes, I have not said that on the podcast as of now, but I am saying that now. I am looking at going back in, but for the time being, I am currently out. But anyways, when I was doing it, right, there was a lot of times where I felt like I wasn't given opportunities, and sometimes I felt like you know, that I wouldn't want to do that, like where I'm just like, oh, I don't know if I should do that. Is it going to, am I going to fail at it? Am I going to not live up to those standards of, those expectations kind of a deal where, now thinking about it, it's like, no, I mean, they chose somebody else to do that because maybe they were probably a little bit more qualified. But again, having that mindset of like, hey, I don't want to do that because no, I'm good. I'm safe. I'm comfortable. Like I'm good at my own doing. Where like in this case, it's like for me, I'm like, dude, give me any opportunity so I can learn. And I feel like these individuals where they feel this way, they don't want to learn because they know they're comfortable in their bubble that they've already created for themselves, and they're not wanting to learn things that they probably could do, but they're choosing not to because they're afraid and they're not wanting to see what that's like. So like that's where I feel like, some people can, probably relate to that because I get it. Nobody excuse me. Nobody likes the fear of change, right? Because nobody on this God-given earth loves the fear that anything could happen at any minute. No, but the thing is about human nature is we get uncomfortable so we can learn and adapt and learn new things at the same time. So this, I would say, if we went up one more, I think you can go on this one because I feel like this one's a little bit like you in some ways.
I will go to that one, but I want to do, the attributing success to external factors
Okay.
because I think sometimes, you know, it's that, people can have the mindset like, oh, I was just in the right place at the right time, or, you know, it's not me. It's like the people, it's the connections I have, or, you know, it's less about acknowledging like the skills that you have, or like what you actually had done
Right.
than it is like um the tools they had used or the environment around them. Everything is like the external, you know um you know whether you're at the right place at the right time, like it's not like sometimes it's only as good as the person who is using the tools. Like
Yeah.
I could play bass, but I could say, "Oh yeah, well, I'm only as good as the bass." Like it's the equipment that makes me sound good.
Well, but again,
No, I have to play my bass.
right.
Like
I was going to say Beethoven had to play a piano to get his masterpieces and everything else that he was known for. Right. I'm just saying that you are right, that you need to have, you have tools,
I
right?
mean, of course, there's a difference between playing like a $50 bass and $1,000 bass.
Well, of
Of
course,
course, there is, but you can still play a $50 bass and hit all the wrong notes and still and sound like shit, or
play the same thing
you
on
can play a
$1,000.
$1,000 bass and hit the wrong notes and still sound like shit. You know what I mean? So it doesn't matter about the tools. It matters about who's playing the tools.
Well, yeah, I'm just gonna throw it out there. I mean, it's kind of weird and similar, but like when people go to college, right, and they learn a certain skill set, when you start to say, okay, well, it matters on where I go. Let me go to Harvard because it's known for the. Who gives a shit if you go to Harvard? I could go to the same community college over here that could teach me the same roughly things. They just might have other things that could help in some ways down the road, but it doesn't mean it has to be the same thing.
Yeah, it's the environment, it's the name,
It's yourself.
Right,
It is you
yeah.
doing it. And so that's what we're saying here. Like, sure, you can say everything else is doing the job, but really, who's doing it? You.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, a part of the symptoms of it's attributed. People attribute this success to those external factors like the tools or the environment or I mean, you fill in the blank. It's I was just in the right place at the right time. It just happened to work in my favor.
Right. And then, so this next one, this is why I'll just say it, and then I'm just going to let him kind of go into it. But it's overworking or perfectionism, right? So as a form of
I don't relate to that whatsoever.
really, I find that interesting. As a form of self protection, they often feel they need to earn their position over and over again. They do more work. Sorry, they do work more hours, work 2 or more jobs, take on extra job duties despite being being overtasked. Sorry. Yes, Matt. Sometimes I feel like that it can be you because
Well, I don't. I mean, I try not to work more hours than I need to, and I don't.
I'm not talking about
I
that piece.
certainly do not work more than 2 jobs, but I have known people, and for the life of me, it's like, oh yeah, I work 3 jobs. How the fuck do you find time for 3 jobs? Like,
how do you
I-
function?
I barely have time for 1 job. I mean, granted, like doing the podcast and doing but I barely have time for 1 job. Never mind like 3. Like, come on.
Well,
Like,
no, I mean,
like people have like, it's like I understand, when you have kids and they like, they want to do like sports and you're like you want to do more. You take on extra duties. You're over tasks. But I can relate to this on some level because I am a perfectionist, and
that is why
I don't know if it's a form of self protection, but and I can't say I feel like I need to earn
I think sometimes
my
you do.
position over and over again, but like I definitely can relate to the perfectionism side where yes, I will work on something until I feel like it's done.
No,
And that's where I will spend hours working on something because I just don't feel like it's done.
no, I'm not saying, and sometimes I'm not saying that's a bad thing. It's just sometimes when you overthink something and then you're sitting there and you're trying to make it perfect, you're trying to do all this stuff. And, let's say later on, even if, let's say you say you're done now, but then you somehow go back to it and you still work on it some more. And so all I'm saying is sometimes, you know, you can keep that same thing and not have to change it, let's say multiple times. I'm just saying sometimes, whether you get it right the first time or whether you get it right let's say the 17th time, I get it. I mean, you want to make sure that, of course, in life, right, that you want to show your best,
Right, but
your best work.
this is a symptom. So I mean, we're saying basically like one of the symptoms is like this overworking or perfectionism.
Oh, no,
So
right.
it is like, you know, taking on like more hours, more jobs, more duties, you know, you feel like you're already overtasked, but it's like you have to keep working. You can't stop working. You have to just keep going because your motivation is just to keep going. Like you have to keep going. You have to keep, and it's the self protection and the need to earn your position is where your overworking is. Like if you stop working, then you can't prove yourself. And that's where that imposter thing comes in is like, I have to earn this position. I have to prove myself. If I stop, then I can't prove myself to my coworkers. I can't prove myself to my boss. I can't prove myself. You know, if I put the podcast in perspective, I can't prove myself to the people who listen to this podcast. I can't prove myself to John. I can't prove myself to anybody who is part of this pod. You know what I mean? Like that's where
Yeah.
I would put the perfectionism in. Not that I'm saying it's me, but like if I was putting myself into this position, like this is where I would say like if I was saying I was overworking and I was doing this and I couldn't stop, and that's why I couldn't stop, that was why. It was like people just, if they are overworking because of that, they have that need to, you know, earn the position because they feel like if they stop, they're no longer going to earn that position. They can't prove themselves.
I
And
mean,
it
yeah.
it could lead right into the next one.
Oh, fear of exposure.
If you feel like you can't earn your position, you can't prove yourself, then you're gonna have that fear that, oh my gosh, they're gonna find out that I'm a complete fraud and I am completely not capable of doing what I'm doing here. And they're gonna tell me that I'm fired or I'm gonna, you know,
Well,
I'm gonna lose my job. Like they're not gonna want me here. John's not gonna want me as a co-host. I'm gonna
yeah.
be fucking gone.
Oh,
He's
yeah.
gonna have fucking Jordan sitting here.
Oh, Jordan.
And you know what?
Yeah,
like
yeah.
I just gotta keep working.
Just gotta
I
keep
gotta work.
going.
I gotta work fucking harder. I gotta do 4 podcasts just to
For
make
podcast.
just to make up what I'm lacking.
Okay, you hear that, buddy, Jordan? If you're listening, just so you know, he apparently thinks you're gonna replace him in some ways. I'm like, hey, well,
But that, you know, but that's like I think like that's the extreme that people go
no, I
to is
agree.
like when people are working, like you have this like nagging anxiety that like, oh my gosh, what if they find out like that I'm a complete fraud and I don't belong here and I'm just not competent. You know what I mean? And people actually have this anxiety where they have to overwork, or not that they have to, but they feel like they have to. You know, and they have this fear of like, I have to just keep proving myself because if they find out that I am an actual fraud, they're not going to want me here anymore.
No, that's true. No, I mean, you're right. I mean, at the end of the day,
Even though they're not.
no, right. I'm just saying that at the end of the day, when you're looking at or at least this one, you know, it makes it harder for somebody to realize that, if you're, again, your true friends, your relationships that you may have with, let's say, your wife or your husband or whatever, right? It makes it harder because sometimes you think that you're just not good enough for them in the long haul, and that you're having to overcompensate.
Right,
You're having
and
to
this
do all
isn't-
these things.
This isn't just for like work. So
Right.
I want to make it clear.
Yes, not just for work.
It's not just like work or doing a podcast, or this could be anything. This could be like you doing a hobby. Like if you are building a puzzle,
Yep,
you could be like,
I'm a friend.
what if somebody finds out that I suck at puzzles? Well, one, who gives a fuck? Like
Oh, is that right? Just who gives a fuck?
you're doing a puzzle. Nobody's good at fucking puzzles unless you're like making one of those like 1 million puzzles that like all the puzzle pieces are blue,
Oh yeah, there you go.
and you're like, I can't fucking build this thing. Nobody can build it. All the pieces are blue.
Well, hold on, ready? Even better. Unless you have some major OCD, or
You
to
know
the
what I-
other extreme here, or ADHD. I mean,
It's like there's a million pieces and they're all blue. Nobody can build it.
well, I feel like somebody could, but just probably not us. I mean,
Go find like a 5,000 or a 10,000 that has an actual picture. You'll be better. Anyways,
too.
but it could be anything like relationships.
Yep.
It could be jobs, but it could be a hobby. It could be fill in a blank. Anything in your life.
Yep. I mean, and that's the whole thing about this. I mean, it's not. I mean, yeah, I think you just said it perfectly. I mean, it really doesn't matter where you're at. What you're doing. I mean, hell, you could be probably on vacation and still feel like a fraud. For just. I
mean,
guess I'm
even
just lazy.
like
I don't know.
within, even within like your friend group,
Yep.
you could feel like you're an imposter when you're looking around your friends and you're like, man, what if they find out like I'm just not good enough for them?
I mean, I'm going to say it. That just sounds like high school all over again. I mean, right? I mean,
Yeah.
does that not sound like high school or like just being in school again? Just thinking
Because I mean,
about that.
you could look around like your friend group and you could be like, well, he's really cool. This person's really kind and compassionate. This person's like really good at, blah, 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 whatever.
Right.
And I'm just me. Like
Exactly,
I'm
me.
just me. Like I'm not really good at anything. Like, I'm not outgoing. I'm grumpy.
I mean,
I'd rather just stay home and isolate.
I mean,
I don't have nothing to offer.
besides that last part you just said, yeah. I mean, man. I mean,
But that's the thing. Like people can actually go through and be like, I have nothing to offer, even though like your friends are not thinking that about you.
no, you're right.
You're thinking that about you.
Of course.
And you're like, well, what if they find out about this about me? And they're like, hey, can you just leave? Like, we just don't want you around anymore.
Just get out of my face.
Can you just make like a tree and get out of here?
Never mind. I was going to do the whole Rick and Morty thing. I'm not doing that. We said we weren't going to do that. But yes.
But it's just that's the problem, and it's the constant like second guessing obviously can affect your mental health. It can affect relationships. It can affect career growth, but it just can affect every, I think, area of your life.
Yeah. Hell, I mean, shit. What about even spiritually?
It definitely can affect you spiritually. I mean, and that's a whole nother aspect. I mean, you could be going to church and be like, I mean, it could be one of those things. Like you could be on the worship team and be like, what if they find out like I'm just not really believing?
I mean, that's true. I mean, you could go a whole
even
segment
though
on this.
even though like you spend time reading your Bible and you spend time praying and you do all the things that Christians do. You're doing everything that Christians do, but you sit there and you second guess yourself and you're like, I'm not even really that great at reading my Bible. Like I'm not even that great at praying. Like when we get together in the morning, when we serve, like I'm not praying at all.
Right.
What if they find out and they tell me like, oh, we don't want you serving on the team. Like, oh, maybe I'll just quit the team and I won't have to worry about it.
Right. But then, of course, what if they start asking questions? And what are you going to come up with then?
And then like, well, what if I quit and they start asking questions? Well, I can't quit. So what if I just joined another team? And then, now you're
Show
like
my worth again. Yeah.
now you're on the worship team and then you're joining another team and then you're like, hey, maybe I'll like head off the, so now you're, it's like,
Now you're just down a rabbit hole.
now you're joining more. And this is like exactly where these things go. Like you're overworking, your fear of exposure, you're self-doubting yourself, and then, people are like, man, you're really knocking it out of the park. You're joining all these teams. Like, you're like, well, it's all about the connections, it's really just not me. It's just being in the right place at the right time,
Yeah. And see, and again, you probably wouldn't. So the funny thing is like, sometimes you may not even see it yourself, as in like, like let's say somebody that does have it and you're just like, oh, it's just one of those things that they do. And then you're not even thinking that this could be a real thing for them. And that, this is what they think all the time. and how they view things and how they interact with you and so on and so forth. They might put on a facade because that's what it most likely be,
Yeah.
and then this is what they're thinking in the background. So there's whole slew of things here.
So who experiences it?
That's a great question, Matt. I'm gonna take this one.
All right.
Imposter syndrome is more common than people realize. It's estimated that 70% of people will experience it at least once in their lives.
No shit.
No shit. And I'm going to tell you why. Because I think majority of people can understand everything that we were just saying. I don't even think it needs to be a legit, I wouldn't say disease or like um, an illness or whatever you want to call it. I mean, it's there. I mean, people think this. I mean,
Yeah.
no offense. I'm going to say it, and I'm going to publicly say this. Who hasn't thought of dying? Who hasn't thought of, thinking that they're worth, what people's times are? Like, you're telling me no one's ever grieved or felt like they're just not good enough to be here anymore? Of course people are going to feel that way, and they're going to think that way. Just like people are going to feel that, they're not good enough, or they're not at the point of where they should be at, or so on and so forth. I mean, you can't tell me that in some point in some time, whether, you're talking about early childhood or hell, when you're freaking 60, 70 years old, or you're old as shit at that point, you can't tell me you don't experience these feelings or these thoughts that come into your brain and say, you know what? I don't know why I'm here. Why am I doing this anymore? Or whatever, right? I mean,
Yeah.
my thing is,
Yeah, maybe I'm just not good enough.
And so,
You know?
in this case, right? So here's some of the groups, right, that we're gonna mention real quick that are especially vulnerable. Okay, so women and minorities working in predominantly male or what does that say? White spaces often feel the pressure to prove they belong. I didn't realize white spaces, as in like
Well,
white people kind of a deal, or are we talking white as in
Yeah,
something else?
I mean, like businesses or places that have more
You mean
white.
like blue collar, white collar kind of. Okay, gotcha. Okay, so I mean that makes sense. Microaggressions, lack of representation, can deepen this feeling.
So let me talk about microaggressions
Oh, here
real
we go.
quick
All right.
because, I mean, I know what microaggressions are, but I wanted to define it.
Okay, go ahead. You define.
Because microaggressions are subtle, often unconscious slights that can demean a person's identity or group membership. So some examples, and
I feel like we do this from time to time, but yes.
I think a lot of people do these a lot of the time, actually.
Well, yes, that is true.
But a lot of these are really, really bad.
Yes,
But it's one of these things like you can really just say one of these and not realize that you're doing this.
Yep.
And that's really just one of those things. But some of the examples include saying you speak good English to somebody who is not native. So like if you're like, hey, you speak really good English, and they're not like somebody who's like foreign. They actually are from here.
right, but
that
you
would
believe
be called a microaggression because you would believe them to be somebody who does not speak English, even though they do.
right, and
So
or even this one, or assuming a black person is a criminal just by their presence. I mean,
fucking
yeah,
John, come on.
yeah, I know. I'm the blackest guy you know. Yeah, you're definitely right. Yes, the most blackest guy you know.
They can also be nonverbal, like a white person clutching their purse when a person of color approaches.
I mean, and this is where this drives me nuts because when you, and I'm going to say it, and I hate saying this, but like you look at different regions of the country, right? So like in New England, I mean, no offense, the thing for me, the one that it doesn't like scare me, but it's more like it's like an awareness that I have, right? So like one of the things that, of course, being in the military, right, it allows me to kind of think about this is like having situational awareness, right? That's like the biggest thing. And I would hope that a lot of people would have this, but sometimes they don't. They're oblivious. So understanding where you are, what your surroundings are, where, let's say exits and certain things, so sometimes it just kind of pops in your head and you're thinking about all this, but you need to know like individuals, right? Or at least like you understand, okay, like, you're like, okay, so I'm walking and then I see this guy on the opposite side of me. Maybe he's walking his dog, and then there's another guy with a hoodie, and he's kind of doing his own thing, but he's being weird. Like, so you're thinking about it, but you're not, let's say, doing an action, right? And you're doing what this, let's say, woman was doing, right? But you're thinking about it, but you're not acting upon it. So like when you start to see, let's say like in the South where, there is a predominant, let's say black culture and, Hispanic and a few others, you know, white people, we're the minority, man. Or what? So everybody, if I started walking up to you kind of like doing some weird shit and, you wouldn't be doing the same thing. So I just think to me, it's like if you're aware of people, right? So like if you notice something that is not what you would think would be ordinary, that would be an appropriate reaction. But like you clenching your purse because you think they're gonna do
So
something.
a funny story. This was years ago. We had one, Danielle and I.
Oh boy,
we
here we go.
we were going to Murphy's Tap Room
Oh, I know that. Yeah, great place.
right on Elm Street there.
Oh yeah.
So we were going there just to get like a drink or something, and we had parked, a little bit further down, like in
Oh.
front of Market Basket
Yeah, yeah,
on Elm Street,
Yep, yep.
and we got out of the car, we were walking, to it,
Oh yeah, that's what I would have done. Yep.
and you know, she sees, a couple people like they were walking towards us,
Mhm.
and of course, like she instantly like clinches and like grabs my hand, and instantly like I know exactly what she's thinking, right? Like and what the thought that's crossing her mind at this moment is like these people are going to rape me,
That's a
and
little extreme, but
I'm sitting there going, these people are just walking down the sidewalk, like
that'd be
they're
a little different.
they're not going to be assaulting you, they're just walking down
No, I agree.
but it's sort of the same thing. It's like these little microaggressions, but it's just this like, she like completely clenched up. Like not everybody walking down the sidewalk has that intention.
No, I mean, and
It's like
I
I do understand like the situational awareness, and I know, yes, has stuff like that happened?
of course.
Yes, of course it has. But would this scenario, like the scenario is a white person clenching their purse when a person of color approaches, but would a black person clenching their purse when a person of color approaches be the same thing?
Very well could be.
Probably.
I mean, again, so it also, I'm going to say it. It depends on the environment you're in, the time of the day. I mean,
Yeah.
we could go on through a whole
Yeah,
list of
yeah.
things, but there's so many things where I would just say that if you saw somebody come up to you and they're, maybe they look a little different and they're like, they're clenching their purse or their
I
bag
think,
or something.
I think it's just the idea of, somebody, you see somebody and it's like, oh,
Well, actually,
even though this person has no intention of stealing your purse, it's sort of like you're walking around Walmart and then you see somebody walk by and you're like, no, 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 no. They're just walking by you. Relax.
well, so actually, I was actually going to mention an example today. So that I'm thinking about it. So I would literally was walking from where we were parked, right, in the back, and I was walking and I saw there was a security guard there, and I was just kind of walking by him, and all of a sudden, he's like, "Hey, how you doing?" I'm like, "Oh, I'm good," and I literally stopped what I was doing because it looked like he was coming to approach me, and I didn't know what he was trying to do or say. He was like, I was like, "Do you need to talk to me, or are we good?" He's like, "Oh yeah, I just wanted to say hi." I said, "Okay." Now that in the back of my mind, I'm like, I know he wasn't. I'm not trying to be threatening. I just don't know if he was thinking that I was threatening in any way, even though I'm just walking across the street to go, into the restaurant. But in the back of my mind, I'm like, okay, are we good? Do I need to do something with you? Do you need to talk to me about what I'm doing? Like, that
Yeah.
was the only thing I was thinking about, but not really a microaggression. It was more like, do we have a problem, or do we need to like, are you just saying hi and you're on your merry way? But again, sometimes that could even be some sort of one, and you may not even think about it. Again, I just didn't know
It's
what I was doing.
it's basically like you're just making assumptions, and the assumptions are just not good. Like it's assuming somebody doesn't speak English when they're not, when they clearly do.
Right.
And you could make, I mean, some of these could be simple mistakes. Like if you're asking somebody that, whether they speak English. It could be because maybe they have a really bad accent.
Well, so real quick, another one.
I don't know. I mean, assuming somebody is a criminal based on their color,
Yeah.
obviously that's terrible no matter what.
So I'll admit something that this was a long time ago, but we're talking. I was overseas, whatever. But I accidentally mistaken someone. Again, unfortunately, it was a person of color. I thought they were somebody that I knew, and I was like, "Oh, hey," and they're like, "Who the hell are you?" And I'm like, "I'm sorry, I didn't mean to." It was just kind of like an awkward situation. And of course, when a buddy who was with me, he was black as well, and he's like, "Did you really think that was so and so?" And I'm like, I'm sitting there like, I didn't mean. I all I did was look at the back of their head, and I didn't know, and I thought that was her at the time, but I was wrong, and I admitted it, and I felt bad, but like, once I think I saw her again, and I was like, "Hey, how you doing?" She's like, "Oh, you mistaken me?" Now they're joking, they're laughing about it, they're joking with me about it, but I felt bad, because I was like, I didn't mean to mistake you, based off your color or your hair color or whatever. You know what I mean? Like that's where I think sometimes people
Well,
like
no, and
to,
I think that's different. It wasn't like you walked up to her and did that, and then you were like, "Oh no, I didn't. I thought I knew you because all you people of color look the same." Like,
well, that no, I didn't. No,
no,
absolutely not.
that would
No.
be different because that would actually be a microaggression, assuming that all people of color look similar.
Well, I mean, and the problem was
like-
is when they were joking with me, they were kind of like, "Oh, so you must think that everyone's the same." And I'm like, "Oh, no, 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 no." I said, "Don't you start that shit." I said I was joking with them too, but I was like, "We're not starting that." I said, "I've never said that everyone looks the same." It's just, again, they're like, "Oh, well, then you all look the
I
same."
mean, sometimes they could be simple. Like, I think maybe somebody assumed that the person didn't speak English because, like I said, the
Right.
accent could be really thick.
Right. And it may not
And they're like, "Oh, you speak really good English for somebody who's not from here." And they're like, "Oh, actually, I'm from Chicago."
then,
Well, that explains it, but whatever.
oh, is that right? You're going to tell everybody from Chicago?
Anyways, so yes, moving on. Some students or people going into first time professional careers may feel left out or inadequate, only because like maybe they don't have like the same experience as the people that are already in those careers. So they could feel like left out or like that they're not as experienced as the people that are already doing those jobs.
So I have a perfect example, and I remember we were. It was our old place of work, buddy. It was good old Farnham. So I remember this one time, this one individual. I can't actually remember his name, and anyways, it doesn't matter. He was an older guy. He mentioned this comment to me. He was like, "Man, these young guys don't understand, like the value of work and all this other crap, and the experience. We have more experience and blah blah blah." And he's saying all this stuff, and I'm like, okay. And of course, this is when I'm in the military still. I was only in for like a couple of years at that point, and I was like, so out of curiosity, because he was a vet too. I was like, so if you're saying that this guy, who at the time I think he was like 18, 19 years old, has no really life experience in his mind, and this guy's probably, I don't know, in his maybe late 40s, early 50s, if I'm taking a guess, and he was like, I just don't get it. I don't understand why this guy thinks he knows everything. And I said, okay, well, let's start off with this. You don't know his life story. We're gonna start right there, right? And then so he's telling me all this, and I'm like, I asked him, I said, how old do you think I am? And he's like, I don't know. I'd probably say you're like, early 30s. And this is now, Matt knows at this time I was probably my early 20s. I was just like barely, I was old enough to drink, but not quite enough to like have years of experience here. But like, and I'm sitting there, and he's like, really? He's like, you're really that old? And I'm like, yeah, I'm not as old as you think. He's like, but you're so mature. And I'm like, that's the difference. I said, this guy may sound like he's immature, but he's not. He may have a lot more experience that he may be offering to you than somebody else. I said, you might offer him something that, of course, maybe he doesn't know, because, of course, your age and wisdom, whatever you want. I said, but don't ever assume that somebody at a younger age doesn't have certain things. So the only reason why I said all that was because, let me just pull it back up here, sorry. Yeah, because of course, when you're starting out in your job for the very first time, you're going to feel like I don't know what the fuck I'm doing. I have the knowledge, but I've never done it. I don't have the skill sets that somebody else that has. But doubting yourself already, not even in the damn field or whatever you're doing. I mean, you're already setting yourself up for failure. You're going to make sure that you're not going to get those jobs or those
Yeah.
opportunities to thrive in. So
Well,
yeah,
I mean that's the problem. You're going into a first time professional career. So I mean, yeah, you're going to probably feel left out until you get that experience. But
right.
I mean, that's what one of the problems. And I think on the flip side of that, sometimes as an older employee, when
Mm.
that younger workforce does come in, you can feel left out because now you are one of those ones who's older
Hold
and
on.
you see those younger people coming in. So now you're like, I can't keep up with these whippersnappers.
Oh, wait a minute. Is that how you felt about me? Or I'm
Hey,
joking. I'm joking. I'm joking, man. I'm joking. I'm just,
but I believe it or not, John, I don't consider myself that old yet,
okay. Good, good, good,
um,
good, good. Yes.
but people that are like, maybe like older than 55, getting into their 60s and
Ah, yeah,
65s,
yeah, yeah, yeah. Yep.
you see these, 20, 30s, maybe early 40s coming in, and they're jetting around, they're doing the job, and you're like, I can't keep up with these kids. Like they're doing stuff that I can't do at this age. Like I can't keep bending down and doing all these things that they're doing. I just can't do the job as well. Like the job will get done, but I have to do it the way that I've always been doing it. And
Yeah.
these kids are doing the job like much quicker and they're able to do more than I'm able to do. And
Yeah.
that's how they feel like they're inadequate, even though, their boss may be like, what you're doing is 100 times better than what these kids are,
Right. They're doing half-ass shit and not
what
doing the work in
these
that
kids are
sense.
doing half-ass jobs, and you are taking the time to actually do the job that you're doing. But they're like, I can't keep up with these kids. Like they're completing shit that I have. It took me, you know, months to do, and they're getting it done in weeks. It's like, well,
Well,
yeah, because they're doing half-ass jobs, and
right. And you're taking the time to go through everything and to do all that. I
yeah,
mean, but I also hate saying this too, but I mean, and you and I both know this, and this is where that kind of syndrome kind of doesn't really help with this either, is that you got an experienced employee, and, somebody who comes in new, all this other stuff, and you know, they're looking at, wow, they're doing it really quick, and they're, maybe it's not as, you know, as let's say, the quality is not the greatest, but the efficiency is great, and that's where I feel like a lot of places, right? So if like you have a reputation, and let's say as like a restaurant, right? Like you want to have very great efficiency, like quick orders, all this other stuff, but you also need to make sure that your food actually tastes great, because if it tastes like shit, then guess what? You're blaming the cook, right? You're gonna blame that guy, whoever cooked the damn meal. So if you think that that chef who did it half-ass is gonna stay there very long, guess what? They ain't gonna stay there very long because they're
I
gonna
don't
want to
know.
keep their. But you know what I'm saying? Like,
Yeah,
because
yeah,
that's
yeah.
life. Because that's how we also see things. Because we want everything ready now.
Yeah.
We don't want it to wait.
So yeah, moving on because we got a
Yeah,
bit, and
yeah,
we're
yeah,
running
yeah.
out of time here. But
Well,
people
yeah.
who struggle with mental health, autism, and other, serious like emotional or mental health disabilities, um, and of course, people within geek culture, because I think that's an important
Aspect as we are geek culture.
aspect. A lot of people within geek culture, often do struggle with like mental health or autism, but a lot of people do deal with like, isolation, and they deal with different things. Maybe not all mental health, but you know, but one of the ironic things is people who struggle the most with imposter syndrome are often the most competent, conscientious, and hardworking.
Right.
So that's kind of one of the things. So moving on to the five types. This is Dr. Valerie Young's framework. She identified five subtypes that describe how imposter syndrome manifests differently. Um, so the first one is the perfectionist.
Mm.
This person sets excessively high goals and feels like a failure when they fail even slightly short. They focus on flaws instead of success and are prone to burnout. Mistakes are seen as personal flaws. The second one, the expert. They feel like they must know everything before they begin. They constantly seek certifications or training and fear being found out as inexperienced. If they don't know the answer, they feel like a fraud.
I'm not gonna lie. I would say so far, the second one is how I feel sometimes.
I say fuck the training.
No, I
No,
mean,
no thanks.
no, I get that, but it's like, especially in certain jobs, like if you're, especially in let's say in a leadership role, like you feel like if you don't have that answer, you feel like you're not going to be worth anyone's time, But
I'm more of a one, to be honest, but that's me.
I was gonna call you a one, but I wasn't gonna go there because I figured, you were gonna say
I'm
it to
more of
you.
a one, but
Yeah.
So number three, the soloist believes asking for help reveals incompetence.
Mm.
They struggle with collaboration and try to prove their worth through self reliance. Even when overwhelmed, they'd rather go it alone than appear weak.
Yep. That's a lot. I mean, you
Wow.
could definitely sometimes you feel like that though,
You
depending on
know?
what it is.
Number four, the natural genius
Mm.
thinks abilities should come effortlessly.
Yeah.
When something requires effort, they assume they're not good enough. They may avoid challenges for fear of not excelling right away.
Oh boy.
Oh boy.
Oh boy. Anyways, no, the last one being the super person, right? Measures worth by how many roles they can juggle successfully, professional, parent, let's say student, partner, etc. Any shortfall in one area feels like a total failure. They chase external validation by overworking. And sometimes even these types can overlap or even evolve over time. So, it's true. I mean, I definitely feel like a two. He feels like a one, but there could be times where you might say you're a three or even a five. I'm not saying the four. I mean I'm sure you might feel like that, but I mean I feel like, in my opinion, I would say one, two, four, five. Yes, the or sorry, one, two,
I
three, five. My bad, and then the four is kind of like maybe if.
I do think a portion of four,
I
but
mean, it
mainly one.
depends.
I
Yeah,
think a portion of four. I think if I have these abilities, they should come effortlessly,
true.
but mainly one.
Yeah,
But I don't think like I don't think so much of a five. Um, and obviously like number three for me, like if I need help, I'll get help.
mm-hmm. Depending
Um,
that one's a depending one, but yeah,
I might not always ask you,
no kidding.
but I will reach out somewhere.
Yeah, and I always try to say, hey, call me if you need me.
But anyways,
I know.
so some of the root causes,
Yes,
childhood experiences.
you don't say, Matt.
People raised with pressure to succeed or inconsistent praise may internalize the belief that their worth is conditional.
This to me sounds like, and I'm gonna hate saying this, but a lot of Asian culture.
Probably a lot of culture. I mean,
Well, no, but I'm
you know,
just saying in general, like that is a very
so yeah, praised based only on outcomes, not effort, can lead to a fragile self image. So this is like, yeah, I mean, if you are the belief that your worth is conditional, so your outcomes, not on the effort. So it's really what you do, not how you got there.
true.
Right? It's the outcome, not on your effort. So you did a good job. No. That's excellent work. I think that's even more of the effort.
Right.
Like saying like this is professional or this is like
Like amateur.
Exceptional.
Okay, yeah.
Like this project is exceptional. That praises your outcome, but doesn't say like you did a really excellent job completing this project. Congratulations.
Yeah, and I feel like it's kind of like for some reason it reminds me of that kid that grows up like let's say their dad is like forcing them to be like the best baseball star or the football star and be like, all right, hey, professional, that's great, keep it up, and or like not even doing that piece, but just like good,
It's almost
do it again.
It is almost like when you only get praised for having A's on your report card, but
Yeah.
not how you got those A's on your report card.
Right? They're like, okay, great, cool.
Cool. I got $100 for having A's on my report card.
Well, just got to keep doing that again.
Did you get like praised on how you got those A's?
Nope.
No, they don't care.
No.
Oh, okay.
No, I mean that's why it also kind of reminds me of like like I said that.
But that's where I think you get people that are like in the workforce now, and they have this, they're so like fragile about failing, like.
Well, it's
'cause
true.
They're not getting the same praise, and they're like, "Am I doing good? Am I doing good?"
Well,
Stop asking me this question.
the problem is I mean, I'm not even gonna go there, but like jobs nowadays don't even do that because they don't care. They just want to see the result. They want to see basically. It's like you're almost living that childhood experience kind of from that. But the next one, like I kind of already mentioned, was the cultural societal expectations, rigid ideas of like what success should look like, especially in competitive fields like academia, tech, leadership, can create pressure to perform a certain way. For marginalized groups, simply being in the room can feel like an uphill battle. So the reason why I was saying culturally, or like before, like especially childhood, like Asian culture, unfortunately, like I said, they feel that if you're not a doctor, you're not gonna fulfill the needs of the family or fulfill the needs of whatever legacy you want to go, right? Or so on and so
This
forth.
is very cultural or societal, so it depends on like what their idea of success like should look like. So I mean, obviously, if you're like working for, Google, or if you're working for some company and they have an idea for what is, like what is success.
Yeah.
If success is up here and you're like down here, you're going to get a talking to, and they're gonna be like, listen, you're here,
We need you to
and
go
we need you to
right
be
up
we need you to
here.
be up here.
like right back there.
This is when I was working at the clinic.
And yeah, that's exactly what I was thinking. Yep.
When I was working at the clinic, my caseload was 107,
Mm.
and they were like, well, we still need you counselors to meet with 65% of your caseload. And I don't know if you could do the math on that.
Let's see. You go ahead and keep talking. I'll figure that out.
It's kind of like you set the bar and you say 65%, and you are down here. But we need you to be up here. And in turn, you go, 107 people, you need me to meet with 65% of my caseload.
So
I have 5 hours to meet with 65% of my caseload in exactly 30 days.
So basically, just to give you a rough estimate, this is about 69.5. So we'll just call it 70. That means you have to meet with 70 people within a month. And now how many in a day could you even do?
So this is, I have to have 70 30-minute sessions in a month when I have 5 hours a day.
Correct.
But I also have, I have meetings.
And you have notes to do?
I have notes to do. I also have supervision.
Yep.
So a lot of those days, I also have to take a lunch. So like there are things that are taking up my day, and even if you scheduled, like basically I went through and I said, okay, I have 14 sessions a day, and I have 107 people on my caseload. even with 14 possible sessions, which I never get 14 sessions, that's like from start to finish,
Right.
not having a break, not having a lunch, filling every possible spot every single day for 30 straight days.
That's an ideal situation, though.
That would be an ideal situation. I would still not meet with 107.
No.
I probably would not meet with 70. And I was probably hitting about 40% if I was lucky. Because one, I was dealing with people that had an addiction. One, they don't want to see me anyways.
Because a lot of it's
So
court ordered.
it's difficult for me to get them in my office for them to sit for 30 minutes. So it's like, it's that uphill battle of this is what success looks like, 65%. And I go, well, that's not possible. I can meet you there. And they're like, well, no, that's not success. Well, shit.
I don't know what to tell you because it ain't going to happen, in my opinion.
And that's the pressure of the expectations.
And then our favorite
And the next one is
our favorite ones, yes.
toxic work environment. So workplaces that value competition over collaboration, or they fail to recognize individual contributions, they can feed imposter thoughts, lack of mentorship or support worsens it.
And honestly, I would say a lot of the jobs of where I've been at, like, so being at a DWE, program, being at Farnham, being even in some of the jobs that I was just taking on in the
The
military.
clinic was one of them.
That was all of it. I mean,
I actually, I actually reached out, and I did this anonymously
of course you did. You wouldn't want to call yourself out now.
because I actually reached out and I sent them a huge email
Mhm.
with everything,
Mm.
everything, like literally
Every detail.
I individually went to every one of the counselors and I said, "Can you give me something that you do not like and that you would report about this clinic?"
Mm.
Just one little paragraph. And they each gave me one little thing.
Mm. What was the number
I-
one concern?
I put it all together and I wrote a really long email.
There you go.
And then I put all my other concerns in there. I mean, there's way too much to even, but
What was the general consensus? Is all I was going to ask.
I won't mention it here because
Okay,
there
fair enough.
there were a lot of like actual, I think, legal
Oh no,
issues that were going on, but
Yeah.
like, I mean, just overall, I think between like the legal things and the dosing issues and the lack of nursing and the over, I mean, the biggest thing was like the caseloads being too high. But I mean, but it was very toxic work environment. Like you have a company who the clinic is a for-profit company.
Oh yeah.
And we have, I mean, at that point, like we didn't have a whole, I mean, that's why our caseloads were 107. We didn't have a lot of counselors
Let's say staff.
and we were still doing admissions. Nurses were leaving. Counselors were still leaving. At the point when I said I was leaving, another counselor had left before me. And they had told us like our caseloads are going from 107 to 116.
And you were like, out of your mind.
I had already given my notice at that point.
Well, that too.
And I was like, well, this is absolutely asinine. Like, you're still doing admissions. We do not have the infrastructure to keep handling this. And this is like, it's so toxic where you're still having us as counselors take on new patients when we can't even meet with the patients that we have.
Correct.
Nurses are leaving and we're having a hard time finishing dosing when dosing is supposed to be done. It's a legal federal thing that says we're supposed to be done dosing at this time.
Really?
and we're still a line out the door dosing
Jesus.
because we have 2 nurses when we're supposed to have 5.
So that sounds like a legal issue as itself, but yeah.
And they're like, oh, no, you guys got to meet with 65% of your caseload. Okay, well, you can meet with 65% of your caseload because I'm out.
Guess, good luck.
But this is like toxic work environments, workplaces that value competition over collaboration. They fail to recognize individual contributions. And I cannot, like, Farnham,
Fardo.
like, they were a nonprofit,
Yes, they were.
but they acted like a corporation.
They sure did.
They, for 100%, if you weren't up here,
You were down here.
you're down here. We need you to be up here.
Oh yeah.
How do I get up there?
Well, figure it out.
I don't know. Figure it out.
Well, no, because I agree with you, Matt. I mean,
It's like
the truth.
And we said this earlier too. Social media, the
Yes, we
curated
did.
highlight reels on platforms, LinkedIn, Instagram, make it easy to compare your messy reality to somebody's polished version of success. So, the impact of leaving your imposter syndrome unchecked, burnout, anxiety and depression, self-sabotage, isolation, and a creative block.
Honestly, I would say that's majority of people, especially if like you're at, let's just say most jobs, right? I mean, I'm not saying that there aren't jobs that are not prone to be higher at a burnout rate than most. I mean, I would say most jobs,
I can tell you from my standpoint, working at the clinic and working human services in general, I'm probably still completely burned out from working human services.
and I agree. I mean, you've been doing it a long time.
I spent 19 years in working human services, and right now I'm working medical records. And granted, to me it's boring. And if it wasn't for like the medication that I'm now approved to be taking, I don't think I would want to keep doing it. But if I leave now, then my medication won't be paid for, and I'll,
Right. I get what you're saying. I mean, it's
like I would not go back to human services. I would not go back to addiction. I think I would rather work at a gas station
already though. That's a little
than to go back to working like at the clinic or working for in addiction or working anywhere in human service. Like I would rather do anything else than work in human services again. Like I just don't want to do that.
No,
like I don't want to work. I don't want to, and it's not because I don't care about people. Well, I don't, but
well, already that bad. I mean,
it's not because I don't want to work with people and I don't want to do the job, because I did like what I was doing. Like I do truly care about people and I do want to help people. It's the people that I'm not helping that are toxic.
True.
And it's those people that truly do suck.
I mean, you're not wrong.
And you firsthand, like it was Christine. It was Cheryl.
Oh yeah, I didn't realize we were going to mention names, but okay.
They don't even work for Farnham anymore, but I don't really care. If you're listening, you guys suck.
I highly doubt they're going to listen, but okay.
Christine made Farnham Center like a living nightmare.
Oh, I'm well aware of this.
Cheryl, I don't know. She was a nightmare as well. Every time I saw her, it was like,
yeah, I mean, well, in some of the other people,
everybody like lifted her up like she was a god or something, and it was like
some of the councils were not all that great. I mean, there are definitely some that I do appreciate having, and
I had zero. Maybe Chris, I had respect for.
Really,
I had zero when they brought me into their office. The three of them.
No, I remember the story, but yeah,
you know the story. I'm not going to say the story, but when they brought me into the office and were having that conversation with me,
oh yeah,
I lost all respect for the three of them.
Yeah, and like I said, I mean, it gets to the point where you've been there for so long, and you put your time and effort, and then they're degrading you on top of that, and trying to make you feel like you're not worth basically anything. That's. But I mean, you and I have both experienced it. You granted, being there and dealing with that, and me dealing with the military shit. I mean, I could tell you there was a lot of people that I still don't have any respect for because it was the way they treated others and
Yeah.
the way they brought you down
So
and the way they did
yeah,
this.
it's not necessarily the job. It's like everybody that was in those, at Farnham or at the clinic, and it's like seriously, if you could just put better people in there,
To do the job.
it would be a better place. But like, I don't know.
Now everything's changed, so I don't really care. Both of us don't really care.
I honestly don't think you could change that much, but
Nah, that's true.
hey,
But then good old coping strategies because this should be our last little bit here. But um, so first off, there's no really quick fix, of course, but these strategies can help manage and eventually overcome imposter syndrome. So like first off, naming that feeling, just simply saying I'm experiencing imposter syndrome can separate the feeling from your identity. Awareness is the first step towards change. That's true. What we just did was name the feeling of how our,
right.
our workplaces were just
I mean,
shitty,
you don't have to make it like. I mean, this is. I can say this. This is kind of lame and being like, I'm experiencing imposter syndrome. Like, you can just be real and just be like,
Like, listen, this is how
I'm feeling this. Like, just be real. Just I'm feeling this.
True. And then
Just separate it from your identity. Like, I'm feeling this, and this is not who I am.
right. And then the next step, reframing your thoughts. Replace I don't belong here with I'm still learning, and that's okay. So CBT or cognitive behavioral therapy techniques can help challenge your rational beliefs. So again, and this is the other thing too we're going to mention real quick. Mental health, when it comes down to it, and especially like seeking that help, you're not weak. Like that's what I think people need to understand. Like, when you say, "Oh, I have to go see a counselor," and I feel weak for doing it. I'm like, no. All really counselors do in the sense of mental health purposes, they guide you. They guide you to where you need to be in your life, and that's it. Like they're there to help you build those tools so that you can have that piece of it. So you're not having to rely on again professionals to be doing.
Honestly, like nobody else really needs to know that you see a counselor. I mean,
Well, that too.
Unless you go around going, yeah, I see a mental health counselor. Like,
Yeah.
if you see a mental health counselor, keep it to your damn self. Like, you don't need to go around telling everybody.
Yeah, you don't. If you want to tell somebody,
If
then
you
that's
want to
on
tell
you.
somebody, that's on you. But like, you can go and see a counselor and not tell anybody. You
Right.
can go see a counselor in a different fucking state if you want to,
Yep, that's what you choose to do.
and not tell anybody and be like, yeah, I was visiting a friend, like whatever. Like,
Do whatever you want.
you don't have to go around and tell everybody.
You can keep your damn business to yourself.
You
as
can.
we already said.
You can.
And then good old keep a success file. There we go. Save praise emails, thank you notes, or a list of accomplishments. Refer to it when doubt creeps in, and it's proof that you are capable. So
I've actually when I was counseling at the clinic, I actually have told people, not not like the emails or the thank you notes, but I've actually told people, and it's actually a good tip out for you people out there.
oh, good tip, yeah. All right. Matt's salty tips. Now I'm joking.
But to get post-it notes
Yes.
and to write these, success things down,
Okay.
whether it's like an accomplishment or like a positive affirmation or something that's like, I'm good enough, or, I'm a success, or I'm good at this.
Such, yeah.
And like, put it on the mirror, put it in your car, put it on the back of your, I mean, my case is black, so I won't see it, but if you have if you have a clear case on your phone, like put it behind your phone so you can see it. Put it in places like where you're going to see it all the time.
Right.
If you cook dinner, put it on your fridge, put it on the, the hood of your stove, fan.
Right. Make it somewhere that you're going to see it all the time and that you're going to remind yourself, okay, if I have these doubts, remind yourself, hey, look, there's a literal wall over here that has all this shit on it.
Make multiples of them. Like,
right.
Just keep filling them out and putting them everywhere. If your house looks like Post-it Note City, fine.
Then if that's, yeah,
every time you look at it, it's going to be that like affirmation of going, yep, okay, you know what, I am. you're gonna keep having those like little reminders, and it'll end up becoming like a subconscious thing,
Right.
because your mind's going to continue seeing those little things, and subconsciously, like, your mind will end up kind of sucking that, like, those kind of like affirmations in,
Right. And those good thoughts. Right. So you want to keep reminding yourself of doing that.
as opposed to you telling yourself like, oh, I'm just not good enough, oh, I kind of suck, oh,
Well, I mean, I would say most people, when they visually see something, they're gonna, especially like if you see a bunch of post-it notes, you're gonna kind of feel good about yourself. You're gonna be like, wow, look at that. That's an amazing accomplishment
right.
right there. And then the next one, talk openly, right? Share your feelings with mentors, friends, or therapists. Can even normalize your experience. So you may even find your most confident, seeming peers feel the same. So, Matt, do you feel the same way? Or are
Well,
we?
John, whenever I see you walk by me, I clench my wallet because I'm afraid
Oh,
you're
you're
gonna
gonna,
steal it.
yeah. You know what? And sometimes when I look at you, I'm like, man, this is such a son of a bitch who's got to be a perfectionist every goddamn time. No, I'm joking. No, I mean, so like, him and I, like I said, when we're open. I mean, we've been open this entire time, right? So like, but there is no judgment, right? There is no like, fear of like, okay,
Yeah.
well, he must hate me now because
Well,
of this
I mean,
fucking
number
asshole.
5, I'm supposed to speak to myself like I would speak to a friend.
I don't know. Are
So
you
I'm
are you
supposed to,
speaking? How are you to
hey,
speak to yourself?
motherfucker.
Yeah, it's probably about right. So but he's true though. Like speak to yourself like you would a friend. Growth includes mistakes and learning. Curves. So like, yes, sometimes when it feels like you're talking to yourself, I mean, people think, oh, it's a little weird, but like, no, it's actually probably a very normal thing to do, because sometimes I feel like people, if they don't, and I'm like, what do you do? Do you talk to yourself through your mind? At least I'm safe inside my mind. Like, are you doing that with your head? Like, that's what you want to do. I feel like talking out loud to yourself is kind of a normal thing to some. It
it's
may.
it's it's only if you're talking to yourself and then you in turn yell at yourself.
Oh, is that right? You have to yell at yourself.
Yeah, it's only when you make it weird, then it becomes something weird.
Well,
But if you're,
correct.
I mean, if you're just, I mean, for me, sometimes like I tend to, I will talk like out loud,
Right. I
but
have done that.
for me, sometimes I need to hear it audibly
Right.
for my mind to like kind of make it a real thing.
No, I agree with you. I
So like
mean,
if I'm working out a problem like in my head, like sometimes it's maybe it's like a podcast thing. Sometimes it'll be just like I need to do this, you know, and then Daniel will be like,
huh? What do you say?
what are you talking about? And I'll be like, never mind, I'm not talking to you. You know,
So my favorite thing is, I'll do that same thing, but and Matt knows this. I mean, a lot of times I like to call people in the car. That's just my favorite thing to do. But no, but even sometimes when I'm not, I generally will have to talk it out. And so sometimes a car is a very, if you're by yourself, that's a very safe spot for you, because unless you're like talking out the window, like, hey, this, fuck this shit, and then you're like doing all this, and then somebody's looking at you like, what the hell is this guy talking about?
I'm too busy yelling at the car in front of me, John.
You do that. I mean, me, it's depending on the day. And then a couple more, and then we're good here. But, so limit comparisons, right? So everyone is on their own journey, right? Comparing your beginning to someone else's middle leads to unnecessary self doubt.
Right.
That's true, because, at the end of the day, I mean, everyone's lives and how they live it and how they experience it is all different. And nobody gets to that same point as you the same way every single time. It doesn't happen that way. That's why everyone's unique experiences are their own and not generalized, right? Because that's why when we talk about, therapy and stuff like that, a lot of times it's more, you may think some people are similar, but they're different because they done things differently in some aspects. So
Yeah.
that's why, just don't ever do that. Don't ever think that you have to be that other person. They had to get there somehow. Now you got to figure out your own way to get there.
Yeah. So the last one is accepting imperfection. Strive for excellence, not flawlessness. So
Mm.
real confidence comes from showing up despite the fear, not in the absence of it. So yeah, I mean, I definitely don't like imperfection, and I strive certain things. I do strive for that like excellence. Um, I do understand that not everything can be perfect. Like
Well,
not everything, and I do struggle with this, and I know that I do. but like sometimes not everything is going to be perfect, and it's just one of those things like I have to deal with. Not everything is about being perfect, but for me, I can only be as excellent as I can be. I can only do as much as I can do.
Right.
And if that means it's just me showing up and doing the best I can do,
Right.
then that's what I can do.
So the other thing I was going to say is, do you not remember our first ever recording that you and I ever did? Do you not remember how bad it sounded? Like, I mean, I will admit it. Like, we didn't sound overly.
We also
great.
didn't have a lot of the equipment we have.
That's true.
today.
But keep in mind that even though we spent, 4 or 5, I don't remember how many hours on literally a minute and 30 seconds of a recording.
Which you can still listen to, by the way.
Yes, you could still listen to it. No, we know we weren't great, and that was the first time we were ever doing it. But at the same time, it also makes us raw. You know, we understand that we know it's not perfect, and we know it's not the greatest on the planet, but we do know that you have to start somewhere, and you have to know that if you're okay with that's who you are, then that's okay. And like us doing it now, I mean, we've been doing it now for so long that we've had to practice. Like it doesn't just automatically happen overnight. I mean, we still fuck up. I mean, I'm just gonna say it the way it is. I still fuck up. I know he still fucks up on certain things.
Nope.
And that's just he's like, I'm perfect. And then this is where we go back to that syndrome. No, I mean we screw up. I mean, there's things that we say we don't mean it, so on and so forth. But that's the whole beauty of this whole thing, right? We accept it, we deal with it, and we move on and we keep going forward. Because that's just who we are. Geeks from the Multiverse, baby. Anyways, so I know we've been talking about this all the time, and I was gonna say, so next week we got, what is that, man? I think it's fantasy characters, right? Or all-time fantasy characters.
I believe so, yes.
So yes, next week you're gonna find out all about our favorite fantasy characters, and it's gonna be from all different realms. Doesn't have to be on one specific thing versus the other, but yes. So again, just keep in mind that this is real stuff. We're talking about real feelings here. So don't make fun of us. I mean, that's just. I'm sorry, man. If I see you on the street and you make fun of me, I'm gonna whoop your ass. I'm just gonna say it right now. I know it's supposed to be a serious episode. I'm just saying.
Oh, geez.
Oh, Rick. Anyways, I know we've been talking for too much now. So until next time, boys and girls.
Stay geeky, 'cause we're geeks from the multiverse.